Hello, everyone. So, this is our pilot, I guess, episode of this podcast. They should be semi regular, and we'll just be going through some topics you guys suggest, or news, or just anything like that, really. So, for future episodes, I'll be putting some gameplay in the background, or if you guys have any footage of your own of your games, I'll be happy to put that in the background as well. But to save literally a few hours of rendering, I'll have the screen blank just for this trial run. Also, for the next episodes, expect the audio to be a bit better overall, as I'm still figuring bits out. Anyway, I'm doing this podcast with two of my good friends, so would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Come on, Biggin, I'll go. Okay, I'm Lubu, small Twitch streamer. I've spent a lot of time in War Thunder since closed beta. Currently make a lot of custom skins on the live site. Yeah, looking forward to talking to you guys about rubbish for the next 40 minutes and see what comes of it.
Hello, I'm Biggin. Former moderator, former game master, former live set moderator.
You were involved
Then-
in the Thunder League, right, Biggin?
Yep. Then moved on to esports side of things and done Thunder League Team Think around about, not a player. Rev Esports, and then just been drifting for the past 2 years.
So, I think the purpose of this sort of, are we calling it a podcast? I think we could call it a podcast.
Yeah.
Is to, I don't know, we just want to talk about topics that could help people,
Yeah,
just general
largely.
topics that are going on at the minute.
Yeah, just sort of stuff that's going on, and I think the kind of aim of what we're trying to do at the moment is just kind of being a vaguely helpful presence around the game. So hopefully this can kind of work towards that in some way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of undue negativity, I think, towards the game. And don't get me wrong, it's not far from perfect, but I think sometimes it's too much negative. It's not a good thing.
Definitely, it's like Gaijin. I guess at this point are just cool to hate, and I feel like new players coming in, just kind of hate Gaijin just because everyone else does, and they don't really know why. It just kind of snowballs, I guess, and
Yeah.
I remember back
I
in
think
the day
if a new player was to check Reddit on the wrong day, they'd be off instantly, probably. But
yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where, if someone is on the Reddit and saying something positive about Gaijin, it's like, oh, it must be a moderator's alt account or something. It's at that level.
So I don't know. I guess the topic I'd like to bring up is sort of, if we're going to do this helpful side of things, is what sort of tips would you guys want to suggest for new players then that would to start the game right now that you sort of learned over the past few years?
Should we start with planes, tanks?
I think tanks is a good one. Tanks is probably the main mode that I play, but
Yeah.
whichever's fine. I think tanks wise a good thing, or a tip I'd always say to new players is not just to focus on one nation. Don't just focus one nation, because you don't learn the different play styles of things and the different ammo types and stuff.
Yeah, you definitely get quite tunnel vision just playing one thing. I mean, it's kind of disingenuous to say that one particular tree plays a certain way, like pigeonholing it. And I think a lot of people kind of try and say all of this nation's tanks like this, but it's not really the case. But even so, it's like a lot of this. It's just hard to pigeonhole. Different nations, they all kind of use relatively same ammunition, I guess, and mobility is slightly different, and it's all vaguely kind of the same, but not really enough to kind of generalize.
Yeah,
And
I do wonder where they get the sort of stigma from. Everybody thinks, oh, the Germans are supposed to be these long range sniping tanks and X, Y, Z, and it makes you wonder where people form these opinions. Is it
I think it's just
precedents
kind of Chinese whispers almost.
Yeah.
It's people kind of hear somebody say, "Oh, the Germans have strong guns, but poor mobility," and someone kind of look at the tree and think, "Oh, yeah, I kind of get that," and then that's the opinion they'll have whenever. It kind of goes from there. But I always think it's kind of reductive to kind of pigeonhole them like that, because then that can kind of get into someone's unconscious mindset of oh, this is my advantage and this is my drawback, and that's going to always stay the same because this is the nation I'm playing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do the same like on every map or whatever, and just sit somewhere. Or I don't know, Big. What do you think?
I mean, if you get, I try not to get stuck in that mindset. Like if you too many players, they seem to, yeah, like you say, they sort of hear something and then that becomes sort of truth, and they try to work around that, or they try to play with it within those sort of parameters, and by sort of limiting yourself to set parameters, you're never going to expand. You're never going to become a better player. Like some, I don't know, if some vehicles is probably worth trying the unconventional method for things, because you'll probably find that some of those vehicles are, you know, quite good in those scenarios.
I think as well, like if you were to choose a nation to start with, I would definitely go for one of like the main sort of three, like Russia, Germany, or the United States. I think they're the kind of three that you're going to get the most reward from playing at the start before you go to some of the, I don't want to say smaller nations, but just less developed at present nations, shall we say.
Yeah, it's generally just because I think you experience more overall play styles by playing the nations that have more vehicles in them. So when you do eventually kind of branch out, you can kind of see what like kind of tank that plays similar to one you've played already. Because if you play like a nation like France or Italy, there's not kind of a lot of varied play styles just because there isn't enough tanks to kind of get you experience with different things. So going through one of the major nations, they have like, at least for
There's a lot of options, right? I think.
Yeah. Like that's why I'd probably say personally that America would be the best starter nation because it's so like varied and so versatile, and there's loads of different types of vehicles and different lineups, and you kind of get a feel for nearly every play style, I think.
I would argue the Germans probably would be the most straightforward. I think a lot of the tanks are easy to pick up, strong guns.
Yeah, strong guns is important.
And yeah, I just think they're very, not simplistic, but you can pick them up and play and do reasonably well at the lower tier.
I mean, there's a APHE for a new player.
Yeah.
It gives them sort of that buffer of they're not spending too much time on individual kills. Like if they to pick up Brits, for example, a lot of new players, they're not quite ready for like aiming in proper areas and all that. They don't know where to aim to efficiently kill that tank quick enough, so you'll find them just like pumping shot after shot. Like you see it all too much. Like if you play lower tiers yourself, and some new player will be just like endlessly pumping shots into you, and you know it's
you're just waiting to die forever and ever.
Any nation with APHE as a beginner nation, they're going to do all right.
Yeah, like thinking about it, I'd say for a beginner the best thing to kind of have is an effective gun, because you're not really going to learn the more kind of refined aspects of the game if you play some like nations with quite weak armament, because you could be doing kind of what effectively is the right thing. You approach a tank, you shoot it, but you might not kill it because, you know, maybe you're playing the French and their guns are a bit bad, and then you die and you're not really learning anything.
Yeah.
But when you kind of you start off with Germany, for example, you know, they can pretty much deal with anything pretty easily. So then the mistakes you make are down to things you need to learn, and having the kind of, I guess, kind of the crutch of a gun that actually can reliably deal with anything. I think it just kind of forces you to take into account like the other aspects of the game, like positioning, which I think is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I think if you have a good gun, it can get you out of a very tricky spot.
Yeah.
And while you might not know the map, or you don't have the experience in game, it can compensate for it in a way. I don't know if you guys have any other tips on tanks and things. I think that's quite a generic one, really, just to diversify your sort of play a bit and not sort of focus heavily on one particular tree.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things, advice that I kind of like to give to newer players, is to I know it's very easy to kind of have an autopilot in your head when you're playing, and that you just kind of don't make a plan and you drive out and you keep driving until you see action, and then you start kind of thinking, okay, then you engage. Because that's because I kind of talked to a lot of people, like back when I used to stream quite regularly, people would come in and they'd say, oh, I just drive out and I die. And it's because of this kind of autopilot that you just keep driving until something happens, and that's when you kind of start. But you got to kind of start before that happens, plan where you're going to be, where you want to go, kind of the fallback and like your advance. And I think learning the maps kind of in tandem with that is probably the most important thing, because it's the most kind of overpowered thing, I guess, apart from squads in this game, is a good position.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, you can have a really good tank in a bad spot and you won't do well, or you can have a bad tank in a pretty good spot and you'll do, better than a really good vehicle. And I think that's probably the most important thing to learn. And it's kind of difficult, I guess, because the maps are so varied and tier dependent, and it's hard to kind of say, like, go through like map analysis, because it would take hours and hours and hours to kind of cover everything.
You could play all night, right, and never get the map you want.
Yeah.
I always think with stuff like, I've said it on streams to people as well when they ask questions on stuff like that, and I always say, just make a decision at the start. It doesn't matter if it's the right or wrong decision. You're going to learn that as you play, right? So say you want to drive to, I don't know, a certain spot, and then you get killed. Well, you learn where you get killed from, or rather than just driving around aimlessly. And I don't think you sort of adapt as easily to the game.
Yeah.
I'd pretty much echo that, to be honest. I think that's a very strong piece of advice.
I think there's also something to be said for server replays. I mean,
yeah, hardly anybody uses them. I don't know.
Yeah, so few people use them, but like for a new player, if you're playing a battle and you see a player in your team or the enemy team doing very well, it's probably worth pulling up that server replay to see what that person's doing, because if they're doing that well, they must, or they're generally going to know what they're doing. I don't know, but so few people use the server replays. It's quite.
I can't remember the last one. I think the last one I probably used is to check if somebody was cheating or not, which, as I know, like.
Yeah, they're kind of.
I think that's all they get used for right now.
Probably.
Yeah, I know. Like, I come across people who've been playing the game for years and they don't know server replays exist. I think it's because, I mean, I guess the main reason that they're used is to kind of check people's replays to see if they're cheating. So Gaijin probably don't want to kind of advertise them a lot, because that's kind of their primary purpose, I guess. And they are kind of hard to find, like actually loading one up. And then you need to get like all the keywords right to find everything, and it's just a little bit idiosyncratic.
Tedious, yeah.
Yeah, they can be really, really helpful, because you might kind of find a spot that you wouldn't really think about going, and you see someone like doing really well, and it's like, oh, I'll try that next time. But then you kind of have the annoying game of trying to find the map that you want to get again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another maybe one final tip for the tank stuff is, I think a lot of people don't realize, or they get frustrated with the kill cam and they skip it. And especially if you're new to the game and you watch where you're getting pinned or you're getting damaged from, I think that can help a lot for new players, because you can see, I can shoot there, and I can, if I'm in such and such a tank, I can kill it, or I can kill such a crew member. Or a lot of people probably get that frustrated, they just skip and straight back to hangar, and rather than sort of picking up the little bits and pieces that might sort of ultimately improve their gameplay, I guess is the phrase I'm looking for there.
Definitely, and I think that's probably why it's important to, I guess, play lots for the nations, because you'll get a better understanding of how to deal with everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a pretty good kind of overlay.
Yeah, I think that's a good little topic, actually. It's a very vague topic as well. We could talk for a long time on that, I think, and cover half of it.
Definitely.
I don't know, planes-wise, if you guys have any tips for planes. None of us are proper I think we're all more tank players, really, rather than pilots, but planes are a tricky one. I think that a lot of people get frustrated with, especially RB planes.
Yeah.
A lot of not time wasted, but spend a lot of time climbing and then just get killed instantly because they don't understand the nuances of what a plane should be doing, or like how to lead the guns without a marker. Maybe if they've come from AB, or I don't know. It's a tricky one really because I know I started playing AB originally when it was just planes, and
Yeah, so did
I think that's probably the best way to learn at least a little bit of AB because you can kind of understand where to lead and things, and it just doesn't so much teach you. I think AB's the flight models are obviously completely arcade, right?
Yeah.
At least RB's a little bit more realistic. It's not fully realistic, obviously, but there's certain things that they introduce that aren't present in arcade. Like you can rip and you obviously run out of ammo. You don't get infinite reloads and things. I think I'm trying to think of a tip for planes really that I could suggest. I think there's a lot of good YouTubers. I don't really want to plug channels on here, but there's definitely people that if you search for specific planes or how they use them, you can learn a lot just from watching how other people do it. And that's what I did when I first started. I watched a lot of videos and stuff because I used to get really frustrated dying. Like, just climb, get no kills,
Yeah.
or just commit head on with somebody and die straight away, and I just lose interest. And I think unless you actually watch some things, I think it's kind of hard to understand.
It is. And I think a lot of people kind of, I guess, would get put off by ARB just because the feedback loop isn't very good.
Yeah,
It's like you spend 3-5 minutes climbing, and then you may have a good game, you might not have a good game, but then you've already invested time into it, and to invest time and then get nothing out of it, it's like, it's not something everyone wants to engage with.
I think squads help a lot. If you have a couple of people to play with in planes,
Yeah.
you can learn from them. Like I would say it's very rare to have 4 completely new people in the game, right? I'm pretty sure you could find at least. I mean, there's plenty of squadrons you can join that'll probably help you with planes. It's that sort of broader thing, and there's not really any specific advice for planes. One thing that I would advise though is definitely to buy the keys for your pitch and roll, and then just use your mouse for like the finer aim and movement. That's one thing that I picked up probably later than I should have done, but
don't use that. Like, there's still quite a few players. I mean, it doesn't help. As far as I remember, when I first joined the game, those controls were actually the default controls, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know, maybe 2 years in the game, like they changed the basic starter controls to like simplify them. But I mean, I guess it's up in. It's more aimed towards the arcade player. I guess that's why Gaijin changed it initially, because it doesn't really affect the arcade player as much. But yeah, if you're switching to RB, you need those extra controls for the extra.
I just think it's a lot. It just improves your aim a lot because you can put a full turn on with just like a key, and then you can finally aim with the mouse, sort of where if you want to take a bit off, or I just don't know. I think it's a lot more effective to do that than, especially binding, like if you have a mouse button, like an extra mouse button to like toggle the flaps or something, and you're not having to take your hands off the key. It's just little things like that make a big difference, I think, because you can get overwhelmed in RB with the amount of controls and stuff, and pressing this and looking this way and trying to line a shot up and X, Y, Z.
Yeah, also the effect it has on the camera.
Yeah.
Being able to use the keyboard gives you much more free reign on where your camera's positioned, find the enemy during a dogfight or whatever.
Yeah, looking around has always helped quite a lot. I've noticed, like, whenever I'm kind of having a dogfight with someone, I always kind of need to make sure that the enemy is in view the whole time. So you're doing that, and then you've got the keyboard controls of like your rudder and your elevator, and like you can kind of look at the enemy while still maneuvering. It's a little difficult, but I found that's really, really useful. But I guess picking a plane that's quite versatile to start off with in RB is probably a good shout, because learning kind of the 2 basic styles of your turn fighting and your boom and zooming kind of in one complete package, I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably quite beneficial because then you can kind of get little pockets of how each kind of style plays. I think after a while you can kind of, once you understand those two styles of fighting, any plane that you pick up along the line, you can kind of think, okay, this plane is a boom and zoom plane, or inherently, or this plane's a turn
Or it's
fighter
a
inherently,
hybrid, or
or a
sort of
hybrid.
like
Yeah.
energy fighter maybe. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think maybe I underestimate sort of how much more there is to learn for planes and tanks. It's surprising really when you actually sit down and try to discuss something like this, just how much there is to consider really.
Hmm.
Especially if you're to put yourself in the perspective of somebody just starting very recently, or maybe even thinking about starting.
Yeah, I think playing with your friends and just kind of baiting for each other, that really, really helps. Because it lets you kind of learn things a bit more safely, I'd say. And kind of, learning the lead and everything like that. Like, it takes a really long time to get kind of very capable at planes. And it kind of takes the load off playing with your friends, because it's the difference between planes and tanks like that is in tanks you can die without doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
But with planes, like it's usually well, not always, of course, but if an enemy's behind you, you've likely done something wrong. But having like a squad mate there with you can kind of it takes a little bit of the pressure off. I think
yeah.
that's probably really helpful for starting out.
I think if I was to suggest a nation to start for planes, I'd probably go Germany again. In all honesty,
Yeah.
I think the climb rate sort of, especially on the early 109s, and just the guns in general. I just think they're very easy to pick up and play. But then on the other hand, you've got the Americans or even the British with some really capable playing. I think some of the teams, I don't really like to use this phrase, but I think the early Axis teams are more competent, I would argue, than some of the Allied ones.
Yeah, I definitely get that impression. Even playing like the very low tiers.
I'm trying to think of another topic we could swiftly change to. What do you guys think to battle ratings? This is a big one, but battle ratings in general, or like how often we get changes to them, or like do you think top tier should be sort of decompressed for argument's sake? I know that's a big discussion a lot of people have. I
Yeah,
don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think top tier I think definitely does need some decompression, but I don't know if it would be easy at the moment just because there's not too many vehicles there. Like it might like with the way that you get the four like max top tier vehicles in every team, like that could be quite tricky because some nations only really have kind of one tank that would work at the highest PR, and then there's like nothing else that really works as effectively. So you have like the Challenger 2, which I quite like, but it isn't kind of the most versatile and works the best in the meta. And then you have the Challenger, one of the Challenger 1s, which don't really kind of stack up as a backup. So if you there'd be a gap there in between. Like there's no kind of middle ground there. I think some nations definitely have that. So I think the next update that we get, if we get some more tanks to kind of fill that middle ground in between, like the really good, like best of the best tanks we have currently, and then the subpar backup. So there's something in between. I think that's when they can safely decompress it.
Yeah. Well, the vehicles themselves should act as that. Like I think that's always been the issue. Like my perspective on it was always been, as much as it'd be great to have all that, I feel like it's always a case of the player base. I mean, or the player numbers. Like that. I guess that's what always comes down. Gaijin's end of things is they're just trying to keep the queue running along, and as much as we want to try and like make that separation there, I'm guessing it's just there's just not so few, but there's a lot less players there that they just have to make up the battles with the sort of mix of vehicles, which is a problem issue itself. It's just like more vehicles are always good. I guess the good we've now reached a point where we're almost at the sort of peak here. So
Yeah.
they can't add any more powerful vehicles, maybe one or two, but they can't go any higher. So at this point, all there's left is to flesh out that lower point. So yeah, there's some benefit there.
I think we kind of sit here from perspective of, we like to think they have like a long-term plan, right, for this game, and I think they probably do. They probably plan several patches ahead, and we probably don't know at the minute what sort of the ultimate top BR is, the bar rating is going to be, right? It's going to be 11, 12.0. So if we kind of knew that from the start, I think and if we knew that already, I think it'd ease a lot of the sort of pressure that they kind of have at the minute on, especially like the issues surrounding top tier and why people seem to dislike it. I think, I don't know. I see a lot of comments that are not positive towards it, and I kind of understand why. I mean, it's not, for me, it's not the most fun area of the game, right? I prefer the lower tier stuff, and that's just me. But I don't know. I would love to play top tier. I just think everything at the minute just is not sandwiched in, but it could be a little bit, given a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah.
Even the Jets, I think. I think the Jets is probably more of an issue than the combined games, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the big problem at the moment, is stuff like the T2 just, well, it is what it is, right? What do you really need to say about it? It's the best performing jet in the game, and it's how they balance. Even balancing those going forward is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to kind of see where they're going to go with planes, because I mean they're probably going to go like probably a fair way ahead to what we've got now, like a lot.
I think that I don't see them going much past the F4 Phantom and MiG-21. Because beyond that,
I don't think there's a particular issue with like the planes themselves. Like there's no, I don't see any issues pushing
it's
that.
the technology. I think that's the problem.
Well, it's more the technology in relation to the RB. Like when you take that factor in, like
guided munitions and stuff,
yeah,
and
that's
even stuff like the BVR missiles for jet games. I don't know. I can't see them doing it, in all honesty. I love stuff like an F-14 Tomcat, who wouldn't, but I don't want to just spawn, climb for 2 minutes, and then blap 6 missiles off and kill people I can't even see. I can't see how that would be like interesting gameplay.
Yeah. I suppose that was always my argument, is how it's okay for the smaller, earlier generation missiles, but once you get to that end, it's sort of fighting the balance between like gamey and like the actual realistic aspect of it. Like how Gaijin goes about those mechanics, sort of, I'm not quite sure, because I don't know how many people would be willing to like sit down and sort of learn how to use a radar and everything in game. Like I don't see that happen. But by like if that was the road, it'd actually make things. I suppose it'd balance things out a bit, rather than just going straight out and spamming the missiles off like it's Ace Combat.
Yeah.
There's actually a bit of like work that goes into actually
a bit of thought process sort of thing. Yeah.
But it's whether players would be interested in learning that, because that's somewhere the game's just never been. Like it's a whole other ball game again. Like I know people talk about going from props to jets and how the gameplay is different, but when you go from early jets
first
like
gen to like fourth gen,
fourth gen, like the mechanics are completely different.
I do wish they would do more frequent sort of battle rating changes, though. Do they do one a patch at the minute, or is it sort of one every couple patches? I don't know.
It seems like one every couple, but they said they were going to do more, and I would really like it if they did. I think it's like, I mean, I think the at least for me, I guess the main benefit the BR change is that it kind of creates different lineups and different
Yeah.
opportunities to use stuff, and it keeps the game kind of fresh without adding new content, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because it's like, I mean, effectively, I guess, kind of, example being downturning the Tiger to 5.3, it's like kind of like a new experience with the game, because that's something you wouldn't really have. You're still gonna have the same games, but you're gonna kind of fight slightly different stuff. If you're downtier. So it does kind of change the way the game plays. I think that's because, this is around the time, I guess, where people get a bit bored with the game because nothing's happening. Now we've got the event just around the corner, really, but it's kind of in between the next patch and when like a month or so has passed and there's nothing else really to grind that people are interested in. And I guess that's when they kind of generally stop playing the game a little bit until the next patch rolls around. And the more BR changes that come out, the more it kind of keeps it fresh. And I think it's a kind of a missed opportunity. They don't do it enough.
Speaking of the operation, actually, do you guys have any like pointers for people to I don't know, increase their not enjoyment of it, but like make it easier for them, shall we say?
Yeah, well, let's just get the requirements up here.
I think they've removed the 2000 score, I think, haven't they? Like the last iteration of this event, because they've changed the way in which you score points in games, so it's a lot harder to accrue the score, shall we say. But I think they've also increased the number of kills you need, only slightly.
I think the requirements, I think there's the easiest or the lowest have been ever. I can't, in recent memory, I can't think of sort of any event this or of this scale with these requirements. Like there are quite good requirements for all players, even specifically newer players. Like there's things you don't have to go out your way to do.
You can just play.
You can just do the magic.
It's good you have 2 days, I think, as well. It's such a... I know the previous style of events, you could do it in Europe. Like, there was no sort of time scales. Like, you weren't confined to 2-day periods. But I think 2 days is plenty enough to get the base requirement. At least, I would argue, at least two vehicles, if you want.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot more beginner friendly, because I know a lot of people did kind of complain about the score. So I guess the benefit is the tasks now are things you can get kind of progressively, and it's not like you'll play a game and not get progress.
Yep.
Which is, I think, is probably the nicest thing they probably could have done.
Yeah.
Which is good.
I think the only standout one is the destroying a set amount of players in one battle. Like that's
a stumbling block.
That's the only one. But I mean, you only require 3 of them, so you can work around it.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll just stick to what I did last time, and I just used I think I just bombed bases in arcade in playing games, and then just did the rest in combined ground realistic battles. And I think that tends to be the most time efficient way, because if you have a fortunate match in the arcade games, you can get them, especially if you use the right planes like the B-29 or the German Do-217s. You can get the tons done in one game, and then literally you just have fun the rest of the night playing whatever you want above tier 3. I think you can even put like just one tier 3 in your lineup and still get the achievements.
I think so, yeah.
So you can just literally play whatever you want, and you'll probably get it anyway.
Yeah, definitely for base bombing, it definitely has to be an arcade, because for some reason in RB the tonnage is like halved, like the actual percentage.
Oh.
So it's doubled, but you get much less actual points towards the tonnage of TNT damage.
Yeah.
So yeah, arcade is definitely way easier to get that. And it's in general as well, because I mean, it's a bit more, I guess, dull for some people to play arcade. I quite like it, but it's a lot quicker, because the games go a lot quicker. So if you're going towards those 10 wins as well, like you're going to get it done much sooner. A lot of people have a kind of stigma towards arcade, I think, but it's really kind of just I don't know, it's beneficial, I guess. It's
I
more
find it.
effective for this
I
stuff.
find I get a lot more crew points in arcade games as well. If I wanted to
Yeah.
grind a bit. So it has its like. I mean, it's not something I actively play, but if I wanted to do specific things or just try something, then that's where I would go to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely easier to kind of vaguely get a feel for the vehicle you're using and get the initial modifications as well.
Yeah, that's true actually.
So I never really, if I'm going with a stock vehicle that is a little bit unique, like it's not kind of very similar to one I've played before, I will definitely go into arcade and get a few mods and then kind of vaguely get the hang of it. Like if it's
Hmm.
like aircraft, kind of see how the guns work and just roughly how the aircraft performs, and then go into RB to give it a proper go.
What do you guys think to the actual vehicles for this event anyway? What's your sort of thoughts on those?
Well, Oxy was actually pointing out, and I hadn't actually noticed it, but apparently all of the vehicles are premiums this time round,
Yeah, they
which
all
is
are.
quite
Yeah,
nice, especially considering I mean, you're getting a rank 5
yeah.
premium there, like that's
It's worth.
nothing to scoff at.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, of course, that's the one for me. Especially, I was talking about it earlier, but if it sits in that sort of 770-83 BR range, then it gives me a nice. That's of all the BR ranges, I think that's my
it's
favourite.
a
Sort of
sweet
the
spot.
80.
Yeah,
It's, so it'll be fun to play there. Um,
I kind of want to just see what the P-59 is going to be like as well.
Yeah,
I
I'm
probably
excited for that.
I'd probably never fly it in air battles or anything, but for ground games it might be kind of all right.
Hmm. Yeah, the vehicles look like. I think generally they look like they're going to be effective, but they're not. I don't find them kind of super interesting apart from the Aero Comet. Like the 110. I mean, I'm pretty sure the gun it uses is different to any of the 30s we have in game. I think it's a different one. Although I think its performance is very similar to the 103. I
an
think
earlier model or something.
Is it a 101? Is it a
it's
101? I think it
101.
is,
Yeah.
but it has limited ammunition. I think
Hmm.
it might be useful in short bursts, maybe.
Yeah. It'll be like a more stable
Look,
HS-129,
yeah,
Yeah,
which is
that's
really needed because that thing's it's a house to fly that thing around.
I
Yeah,
think the BT7 is going to be probably one of the most sought after
yeah,
vehicles. Like that's going to be used at all battle ratings just because it's a better BT7,
yeah.
right?
yeah. It's going to be really effective, I think.
Yeah.
Does it
I mean,
use
it's
the early?
T34.
Yeah, is it the
Yeah.
early the L11 or is it a later one?
I think it's the early one, right? Is it the
Yeah,
F32? I'm sure that's the early. Let me just check.
I think
F32.
someone. I think it's someone. Yeah, someone said it's similar to an F34. Is that for F34? Yeah.
I mean the like the early T34s are all F34 cannons, so you presume it's going to be something along that kind of ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's
That'll
Which,
going to
be
be
I mean,
interesting.
with that chassis at that sort of the speed you can get up to.
I hope it's like 2.7 battle rating or whatever, and it'll just fit perfectly into a nice lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a
The
good
ships,
scout vehicle as well.
the ships are interesting. I don't know. I'll maybe try to get them, but
They'll be good grinders, I think. Like the River class, those kind of ships don't seem to do too well. Like they're a bit too big, and their like large caliber guns don't seem to do too much damage. But they're very hard to knock out, like with small arms, like 20 mils and 50 cals. So I think they're both going to be good. I think, especially the tier 3 for Japan. Like that's really going to help speed up the grind.
and I suppose you can get them off the market after if that's what you want. It's probably more cost effective for yourself to do that than to buy some of the gold. It depends what price they're going to go for, I guess, but
Yeah.
normally they go for cheaper on the market, especially at the start anyway.
Yeah, we're going to have to
Um,
see. 'Cause yeah, like like you were saying earlier, it's because people can only get one of each. That's actually probably going to limit it a fair bit, especially for like the high tiers. I think people will try and highball it for those, and it might kind
Yeah,
of stay quite high.
yeah, it might be a little bit more expensive this time around.
Hmm.
We'll see.
But they all look pretty good. Like nothing kind of too, like at least personally for me, like nothing kind of too interesting apart from the Aero Comet.
Yeah,
Uh, but they look like they're all going to be functional, which is going to be nice.
yeah, and they're all premiums, which is probably a first, right? So we can't really
Hmm.
beggars can't be choosers and all that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sp-
Like the
Speaking of,
Orbital is
yeah,
going to be very good.
I don't know. I just think it's an interesting one because it depends what the gun's like on it, or what the post pen is going to be like more precisely. Than
Hmm.
it's not a very sturdy vehicle, shall we say? And if the gun isn't as pokey as you want it to be, then it might not be all that effective. But we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice that it's fully stabilized,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's really going to help. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully it won't be too high, like around kind of 8.0
8-ish,
ish, give or
yeah.
take.
Speaking of
Yeah.
the ships, though, guys, what's your thoughts on like the actual naval mode? I know you don't really play it so much, Biggin, but maybe you could give some input on why you don't play it, or
Yeah.
Um, I I guess I just don't play it because it, how that it's I don't really see the tactics behind it, if that makes sense. Whether that's just me or not, I couldn't tell. Or truly, I've probably not put enough effort into actually attempting to play it than I should have. But for me, like just looking at it at sort of face value, I can't really see sort of the with tanks. There's set tactics and set mechanics, and you can work around them. Like you know, all the vehicles have got their own things to do. For ships, I just look at it and it's just, to me, it's just people back and forward, firing each other and trying to cap points. But beyond that, it's all up in the air as to sort of what you do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
um, like I guess just because you can mostly always see each other on the map, so it's um I mean they're ships after all, but yeah. I think Lubu, you pointed out. I think I probably would play it if there were big name ships in there.
yeah.
Like I'd at least
For me,
give it a go.
that's a big sort of drawback at the moment, and maybe it was the wrong option to choose the smaller boats to start. I mean, the smaller boats are kind of fun in their own way, but there's not the same sort of draw for me as there is like you come to the tanks and stuff and you think, oh, I want King Tiger or I want the T-34. Or there's not the same sort of draw because for me, people wouldn't come to a ship game and want, oh, I want a destroyer or I want a Brooklyn. Or you want to come and you want to play the Yamato or Bismarck or
Exactly.
the iconic sort of ships. And for me, as long as they're not sort of present in the game, or I mean, we'll probably get them eventually, but as long as they're not present currently, I don't. I just struggle to see it having the same sort of draw audience-wise as something like World of Warships would have, or I mean,
Yeah.
no other game I don't think has ever sort of successfully tried to do a realistic naval engagement, just
Hmm.
because of how it would play. Really, I know Gaijin have argued that themselves, like be sort of well out of visual range of each other, slinging shells over the horizon in some cases, and would that be fun? I don't know. It's a tricky one because as much as I'd want those kind of shit, it's would they fit the parameters for which we have at the game at the minute? I don't know.
Yeah, I think a big problem that they kind of have is that all of the maps, well, at least most of the maps at the moment, are made for smaller ships and they've added
Yeah,
areas for the bigger ships.
yeah,
So I think it's hard for people who are playing it to kind of see the potential that bigger ships will have because already, like if you're playing one of the destroyers, you spawn in and like you're facing cruisers.
Yeah,
These are
have
things
fun.
that can basically one shot you, and they're in full view, and they can hit you as you
In the spawn. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like this isn't fun, is it? It's like how do you counter that? And I think just because of the way the game that they've made functions, it doesn't function with the big ships in mind. So they're gonna have to really change something.
Yeah.
But
They need to do maybe sort of a dynamic spawn system thing in which you can have, like, say your lineup consists of a certain amount of points in total, and each ship is a different amount of points, because obviously you can't, even some of the battleships, you can't say, right, a Bismarck is equal to, I don't know, an Iowa or something, because it's not. So you would have a Bismarck be cheaper in spawn points than something like the Iowa. You'd combine the lineup and it'd be a certain amount of points, and that's it. So you're not going to have everybody just playing the top ships all the time. At least that's what I'd like to think, but I don't know.
yeah, like I guess
It's a
they've
weird
kind of
one.
got. There's kind of two ways they could go about it. They could kind of segment like the kind of types of gameplay. So like a large open bit of the map for the big ships, kind of like some islands for the destroyers to kind of play about in, and then like maybe like a little area for the like a paddling pool for the PT boats at the other end of the map. But I think they kind of miss an opportunity with how ships kind of played off each other in real life, like destroyers running screens and stuff.
Yeah.
So if they kind of had it where, I don't know, it's hard to kind of come up with something off the bat, but like if all the ships are kind of together and they have opportunities to kind of help each other, but it's hard in a game like War Thunder to do that, because for the game to function and the game to work with different people doing different jobs in mind, people actually need to do those things.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the same reason why I think an attack and defend mode wouldn't, like for tanks, I mean, wouldn't kind of be easily workable, because for it to work, players need to do certain things. Like you need to be defensive for it to work, but some players, aren't going to bring a lineup with a defensive tank in. They don't want to play defensive, so it would be nice to kind of have ships doing those kind of roles, but you need to kind of force players to take those roles on and actually, utilize them, like destroyers running screens. But players would kind of come in and not want to do that, and then it would kind of like the whole framework falls apart. So actually, kind of getting that gameplay functioning has too much emphasis on player input, and I think that's why it probably wouldn't work, which is a shame, really, because that's what I want to see out of naval mode in the future, like a really long, enduring confrontation.
I mean, I will say one thing about ships, and and a lot of the models in game, they are really well made, or for me at least, anyway. To look, like some of the ships, they put a lot of effort into it. It's just a shame that it's just, how would I even phrase this? I just think, for me, unless they change or at least improve the aiming system and the damage models, then there's going to be, it's just going to be more of the same. I don't know. I think if you're getting hit with that many shells and stuff like that, then it should be more. There should be more consequences to it rather than.
Yeah, that's another thing, I think, because it's like, say if you're kind of shooting a destroyer head on, you can hit the front with like tens and tens of like 150 millimeter HE shots, and it will just keep going because you're not damaging the components at the back.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if like, even if you've kind of blacked out a section, if like apart from that, well, like on top of that, you can cause kind of like overwhelming damage, which would just like rip a part of the hull open, and that would kind of destroy the boat. So I think fixing their damage model, or not really fixing, but kind of developing the damage models would go a long way, I think. But
I give them, for me, I give them time to fix it. I mean, I've played tanks since closed beta, and they've improved a lot of things. When you look at some of the original tank gameplay videos and stuff, it's come a long way, right? So
back before repairs.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd take it, get damaged,
exactly,
and sit there the rest of the battle.
I think people forget a lot of people complaining about all sorts of stuff that's present in the game at the minute, but I think people actually come. Yeah.
Yeah, there's.
Would you? So I mean, maybe one final thing. I don't know if you guys want to do one final topic. But where do you guys see the game sort of going from now on, and what would you like to see, and what are your thoughts on
Swedish
the
tanks.
the state of some of the current trees in game? Really, I think that's probably a good way to finish it, right?
Yeah, I think one problem, I guess, with like the smaller trees that don't really have a lot of tanks, like Japan and Italy and stuff, is that they're never going to make a lot of. It's like a cycle, like a. They're not going to make a lot of money because there's not many premiums, but they can't add
Yeah,
too many premiums because they're going to have nothing to put in the main tree.
yeah.
So they're just kind of doomed from the
It's a
start.
self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of why a lot of the lesser trees, I guess, don't get a lot of attention. Apart from Britain, they just don't seem to add many G premiums for Britain at all, which is kind of weird because there's so many they could
Yeah,
add.
yeah.
But especially for Japan, because it's like I know a lot of people kind of say, oh well, we want to see like event vehicles for Japan, but it's like, well, if
Well,
we add an
which,
event
yeah,
tank, like that's going to be one more tank that isn't going to be in the tech tree, like the main tech tree, which is probably going to be quite vital to make a lineup out of or whatever. So it's like, what do you kind of do? So I mean, where I was kind of going with that is I'd like to see them fleshing out the smaller trees, but I don't know if it's going to be something entirely worth their time.
hmm,
And I know that their kind of current philosophy is just kind of firing out new stuff. Like
left, right, and centre, basically. For some people, it seems to be that way.
yeah. It's like they're kind of constantly setting the foundation for so many things but not really building them up. They're kind of
Yeah,
putting the
that's like,
groundwork out there for
yeah,
like
yeah.
like all these new AA, new top tiers, bigger ships, faster planes, but there's no kind of development on top of that. It's just like kind of these are all of our plans, and like these are kind of like the start of everything, but they're not kind of building up with it. And I guess in the way they're kind of, I mean, I can't like pretend I know exactly how they work internally, like what their ultimate game plan is, but I think it would probably help the game in the long run if they build it up instead of just laying foundations for new stuff.
Yeah.
Because it
I,
makes certain aspects of the game. Sorry to keep
no,
going
no,
on,
it's okay.
but it makes certain aspects of the game kind of fun. You get your best heavy cruiser, your leather people. You get your fastest plane, you wreck people. You get your ADATs, you remove everything. Those parts of the game, I think. Well, I guess for some people they are fun because it's like that's the end game. I think Gaijin focus a lot on the end game, so they're going to keep adapting that end game
Yeah.
to keep people kind of wanting to be the top dog all the time. But it's not all about the grind. I think Gaijin think it is like it's just the grind. That's why people play. But no, like people kind of find little comforts, like lower tiers, or they find a lineup they like, and people are just more than happy to just play that over and over again. I think, and I think they don't really know that or kind of focus on that, and I think that's kind of going to limit how good the game is going to be in the long run. I will stop talking now. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd be all for seeing, like, on the issue of stuff like I don't really like using the name or the term smaller nations, but I'd be all for seeing, like, some of the more minor powers, shall we say, like Italy receiving some Hungarian, like, Second World War tanks and things, or
Definitely.
Germany doesn't need them. Let's be honest, they can fill probably two lineups at some BRs, and yeah, I just think it'd be a nice touch to do something like that, and it'd actually help the overall lineups for especially some of those nations.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I was trying to think about how they do that. Like, I guess what they could do is add another line, just a straight line
yeah, exactly.
down, like irrespective of kind of like BR, because if they kind of
Yeah,
mixed them in, you wouldn't be able to make a lineup of them. But
yeah.
having it just progressive, like you could pick and choose which kind of, I guess, Hungarian or
Could
Romanian
supplement
tanks.
them. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be the best way to go about it. But it looks like, at least from what they've done at the moment, is that they're picking kind of the most popular and the most easy to get information on, I guess, planes and tanks, like the IAR. Uh, there's the
that was a user
Romanian
model, though.
tanks.
I think, right? I'm sure that was a user
Actually, yeah,
model.
you're right. You're right. Actually, yeah, yeah, my bad. Yeah, like what was kind of worrying is that they'd kind of pick things like that and make them GE premiums, and then not going to bother with adding the
Yeah.
rest of them, because I guess they are kind of hard to find info on. But
I'm surprised they haven't done more. Sort of, they could use. I don't know. Did the Italians maybe use some of the Germans, like some hand-me-downs of for one of a. I'm surprised we haven't had like a premium Panzer or something, or
yeah, like
just dead simple things they could find. And obviously, people might not be that happy to see them, but for the sake of lineups, straightforward solution, right? I would think so.
yeah, because Italy really do struggle with that. It's like 4.7 to 6.3,
Yeah,
or 6.0, I think, and it's like that's terrible.
and it's not like it would ruin the immersion that much because they can't really fight each other, Germany and Italy, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one, and that's before you even get onto the Pandora's box that is new nations, because everybody's arguing, like, well, from what I read anyway, people want like a patch of just bug fixes and XYZ and no new content, and
Yeah, I don't know about that. Like,
no,
people think they want that, but I think there's other games that have already proved that that doesn't quite work.
exactly.
The thing is,
I
they
think
could
Rainbow Six is a good example of that. They had a
probably
big
do
bug fix patch.
they could probably do a big bug fix patch, right? And then by the time the next patch comes around, there's bugs that are already there again. So they've effectively just, I don't know, they can't stop creating new content. I think it's just the rate at which and the price of which is also one of the big issue people seem to have, like the amount of new premiums that are coming out. And I mean, we're always going to get those premiums. It's just the fact we've got them all in one patch. It's tipped people, I think, a bit in the wrong direction.
I think people kind of get the wrong idea with all those, like, it's like the meme of 8-7 premiums, but they've added one for every nation now, so they are going to slow down, and it's not going to be like, oh, every patch we're going to get this huge, really expensive tank. I mean, they've kind of done every one they need to for now, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think that'll kind of slow down, which I think for the community's kind of perception on Kaijin will probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I'd love to see them go back to. I was having this talk with Biggin the other day about like, when was the last sort of low tier Golden Eagle vehicle premium we had in the game?
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember what it was. I know obviously we've had the A2D or whatever, but I'm talking about like the really lower tier stuff like 2s and 3s or. I couldn't think what it is or what it was.
Italian Spitfire, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what they've done that's lower. It wouldn't even take much though. It would just be like I don't know, like one of those armored cars for Britain, like the AEC, but with like a 75 instead of the 57. Like that would be so easy to do.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I miss those. So it's just kind of fun, like interesting little low tier vehicles. I think there's a lot of enjoyment with that. And like, because they're kind of vehicles people buy, I think, not really to grind with, but just to kind of have fun with, because they just kind of like offer unique opportunities to play the game. And there's so much potential in those kind of vehicles.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good sort of introduction sort of podcast, guys. I don't know if you guys have anything else to raise or you want to urgently talk about. I know it's getting kind of late, so.
Yeah, coming up to a round hour, so that's pretty good, I think.
Not bad.
Yeah. Excellent.
Nice little. I think if you guys have any sort of feedback, constructive or criticism, it's always welcome. You guys have any topics if we do another one, you want to sort of see us talk about or waffle on about in some cases, then feel free to let us know.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you all for, well, I guess listening, not really watching. I don't know what we're going to really put in the background yet. Yeah, please leave feedback, and I guess we'll all see you next time for the first proper episode. So, goodbye from me.
Goodbye, guys. Cheers.